our gathering music this morning, Brenda's going to play so lovingly, What Child Is This?
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fayetteville. My name is Oliver. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious tradition that values freedom in religious thought and journey. We uphold the unity of our interconnections, connections to each other, to all of life, and to the precious universe of which we are a part. We affirm the universality of love and hope as we journey together in community, and we welcome you, whoever you are at this moment and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. For those of you joining online, welcome. If you are new, please check out our website for more information and to sign up to receive the weekly email. For those of you visiting us for the first time in person, you'll find a visitor information card in the seat back in front of you. We'd love for you to fill one out so we can get you on the email list and keep you informed of UUFF happenings. Joys and Concerns is not going to happen as usual because of our lovely show, so so you can fill out one for leadership and drop it in the offering basket when that happens. If you have a need for hearing assistance, our AV Tech David can help you with that. Children are always welcome in our service, but there is a staff nursery downstairs. Please remember to silence your cell phones. Thank you for being with us today.
Please join me as we light our chalice. Love is the spirit of this community, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in truth, and to help one another. Thus do we covenant together.
Now it's time for the offering. The important work of this fellowship is possible because of your generous contributions of time, talent, and treasure. Every contribution of every size is helpful and appreciated. As we pass the offering baskets, we invite you to share financially. If you prefer, you may give at our website by texting online or mailing checks to our office. While that's happening, announcements. There are two special additional services this week. We have the winter solstice service on Thursday, the 21st at 7 p.m., and a Christmas Eve evening service on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Choir gets to come at 4:30 on the 9th. 9th? 9th?
At the night.
At the night. Yep. Words. Words are fun. Is that it?
that's choir is coming at 4:30 on Christmas Eve night for the 5:30 service. That's right. You did great. You did really good.
How many of you have ever seen or read Best Christmas Pageant Ever? Would you raise your hand? Okay. A month or so ago, Alex Emmons and I were chatting, and she said, I wish the fellowship would do more group things for services. And that got me to thinking. And so I went to Renee and said, how about if we do Best Christmas Pageant Ever? And she said, let's go for it. So I wanted specifically to thank Alex and Renee and the people behind me who, when I asked them to take a part, enthusiastically said yes and are here. I give you Best Christmas Pageant Ever.
The Herdmans were absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world.
They lied and stole and smoked cigars, even the girls.
And hit little kids and cussed their teachers and talked dirty and took the Lord's name in vain.
And set fire to Fred Shoemaker's old broken down tool house.
The tool house burned right down to the ground, and I think that surprised the Herdmans.
They set fire to things all the time, but this was the first time they ever managed to burn down a whole building.
One fireman collared Claude Herdman and said,
Did you kids start this fire smoking cigars in that tool house?
We weren't smoking cigars.
And we weren't. We were playing with my Young Einstein chemistry set, which I stole from the hardware store, and that's how we started the fire.
I guess things would have been different if they'd burned down, say, the Second Presbyterian Church instead of the tool house. All the neighbors had pestered Mr. Shoemaker to do something about it.
So everybody said the fire was a blessing in disguise.
Father said it was the only good thing the Herdmans ever did. And if they'd known it was a good thing, they wouldn't have done it.
They were just so all around awful, you could hardly believe they were real.
Ralph.
Imogene.
Leroy.
Claude.
Ollie. And Gladys.
6 skinny, stringy-haired kids all alike, except for being different sizes and having different black and blue places where they had plonked each other.
They lived over a garage at the bottom of Sprout Hill. Nobody used the garage anymore, but the Herdmans used to bang the door up and down just as fast as they could and try to squash one another. That was their idea of a game.
Where other people had grass in their front yard, the Herdmans had rocks.
And where other people had hydrangea bushes, the Herdmans had poison ivy.
There was also a sign in the yard that said, "Beware of the cat." New kids always laughed about that till they got a look at the cat. It was the meanest looking animal I ever saw.
The mailman would not even deliver to the Herdmans because of that cat.
The Herdmans moved from grade to grade through the Woodrow Wilson School like those South American fish that strip your bones clean in about 3 minutes, which was just about what they did to every teacher they ever had.
But they never, ever got kept back a grade.
When it came time for Claude Herdman to pass the 2nd grade, he didn't know his ABCs or his numbers or his colors or his shapes or how to get along with anybody. But Miss Brandel passed him anyway.
For one thing, she knew she'd have Ollie Herdman the next year. That was the thing about the Herdmans. there was always another one coming along, and no teacher was crazy enough to let herself in for 2 of them at once.
I was always in the same grade with Imogene Herdman. And what I did was stay out of her way. It wasn't easy to stay out of her way. You couldn't do it if you were very pretty or very ugly or very smart or very dumb or had anything unusual about you like red hair or double jointed arms.
But if you were sort of a medium kid like me and kept your mouth shut when the teacher said,
"Who can name all 50 states?"
you had a pretty good chance to stay clear of Imogene.
So the Herdmans pretty much looked after themselves. Ralph looked after Imogene.
Imogene looked after Leroy.
Leroy looked after Claude, and so on down the line.
The Herdmans were like most big families. The big ones taught the little ones everything they knew.
And the proof of that was that the meanest herdman of all was Gladys, the youngest.
We figured they were headed straight for hell by the way of the penitentiary.
Until they got themselves mixed up with the church and my mother and our Christmas pageant.
Our Christmas pageant isn't what you'd call four-star entertainment. Mrs. Armstrong breaking her leg was the only unexpected thing that ever happened. The script is standard. The inn, the stable, the shepherds, the star, and so are the costumes, and so is the casting.
Primary kids as angels, intermediate kids as shepherds.
Big boys are wise men.
Elmer Hopkins, the minister's son, had been Joseph for as long as I could remember.
And my friend, Alice Wendelken, is married because she is so smart, so neat, so clean, and most of all, so holy-looking.
All the rest of us are the angel choir, lined up according to height because nobody can sing parts.
As a matter of fact, none of us can sing. We're strictly a no-talent outfit. It's always just the Christmas story, year after year, with people shuffling around in their bathrobes and their bed sheets and those sharp wings.
Of course, nobody even thought about the Herdmans in connection with the Christmas pageant. Most of us spent all week in school being pounded and poked and pushed around by Herdmans, and we look forward to Sunday as a real day of rest.
When my brother Charlie was in with the little kids, his teacher thought up something different to do. She had everybody write down on a piece of paper what they liked best about Sunday school.
One kid said he liked hearing all the Bible stories. Another kid said, I like learning songs about Jesus.
Finally, the teacher said, "I think we have time for one more. Charlie, tell us what you like best about Sunday school."
My little brother Charlie stood up, and he didn't even have to look at his piece of paper. What I like best about Sunday school is that there aren't any Herdmans here.
Well, the teacher should have stuck with Bible stories because everybody forgot all the nice churchy things the other kids said and just remembered what Charlie said about the Herdmans.
I like all the other stuff, but she said to write down what I like best. And what I like best is no Herdmans.
Not a very Christian sentiment.
Maybe not, but it is a very practical one. Mother told him last year Charlie had spent the whole second grade being black and blue because he had to sit next to Leroy Herdman.
In the end, it was Charlie's fault that the Herdmans showed up to church.
For 3 days in a row, Leroy Herdman stole the dessert from Charlie's lunchbox. And finally, Charlie just gave up. "Oh, go on and take it," he said. "I don't care. I get all the dessert I want in Sunday school."
Well, who gives it to you? I want to know.
The minister.
Of course, that was the wrong thing to tell the Herdmans. If you wanted them to stay away, and sure enough, the very next Sunday, there they were, slouching into Sunday school, eyes peeled for the refreshments.
Hey, where do you get the cake? Ralph asked the Sunday school superintendent, and Mr. Grady said,
Well, son, I don't know about any cake, but they're collecting the food packages out of the kitchen.
Now, what he meant was the canned stuff that we brought in every year as a Thanksgiving present for the orphans' home. It's just our bad luck that the Herdmans picked that Sunday to show up to church. They thought there might be something to what Charlie said about refreshments.
So they stayed. They didn't sing any hymns or say any prayers, but they did make a little money.
Imogene snaked a handful of coins from the collection basket.
the end of the morning, Mr. Grady made an announcement. We'll be starting rehearsal soon for our Christmas pageant. And next week, we'll all gather in the back of the church to decide who will play the main roles. So be sure your parents know that you'll be staying a little later next Sunday.
Mr. Grady made this same speech every year. Besides, we all knew what part we were going to play anyway.
Alice Wendlekin turned to me and said, I hope you're going to be in the angel choir again. You're so good in the angel choir. What she meant was, I hope you won't get to be married just because your mother's running the pageant.
She didn't have to worry. I didn't want to be married. I didn't want to be in the angel choir either, but everybody had to be something.
I figured Imogene didn't care much about the Christmas pageant.
But I was wrong.
Miss Armstrong was trying to run things from her hospital bed, and she called Mother at least every other day at supper time. Don't let me interrupt your supper, she always said, and then went right ahead and did anyways.
By Sunday, Mother was already sick of the whole thing.
After church, we all filed into the back 7 pews with Sunday school teachers who were supposed to keep everybody quiet.
The little kids were tired and the big kids were hungry. Mothers wanted to go home and cook dinner. The dads just wanted to go home and watch the football game on TV.
Now this isn't going to take very long. First, I'm going to tell you about the rehearsals. We'll have our rehearsals every Wednesday at 6:30, and you must all try to be present at every one. Now you little children will be our angels. The older boys and girls will be shepherds and guests at the end and members of the choir.
Mother was really zipping along.
And we need Mary and Joseph, the 3 wise men, and angel of the Lord. They aren't hard parts, but they're very important parts. We all know what kind of person Mary was. She was quiet and gentle. And the girl who plays Mary should try to be that kind of person. I'll ask for volunteers, and then we'll all decide together which girl will get the part.
That was pretty safe to say, since the only person who ever raised her hand was Alice Wendlekin.
But Alice just sat there, chewing on a piece of her hair and looking down at the floor. And the only person who raised her hand this time was Imogene Herdman.
Did you have a question, Imogene? I guess the only reason she could think of, that was the only reason she could think of for Imogene to have her hand up.
No, I want to be married and Ralph wants to be Joseph.
Yeah.
Well, we want to be sure everyone has a chance now. Does anyone else want to volunteer for Joseph?
No one did. No one ever did. Especially not Elmer Hopkins. But he couldn't do anything about it because he was the minister's son. You're going to be Joseph. That's it.
I don't want to be Joseph. I'm too big and I feel dumb up there.
I can understand that. I can even sympathize. But till somebody else volunteers for Joseph, you're Joseph.
I'll bet he didn't think the somebody that would volunteer would be Ralph Herdman.
All right, Ralph will be our Joseph. Now, does anyone else want to volunteer for Mary? Alice, don't you want to volunteer this year?
No, I don't want to.
Nobody volunteered to be Wiseman either, except
Leroy.
Claude!
And Ollie Herdman.
So there was my mother, stuck with a Christmas pageant full of Herdmans in the main roles.
There was one Herdman left over and one main role left. And you didn't have to be very smart to figure out that Gladys was going to be the angel of the Lord.
What do I have to do?
The angel of the Lord was the one who brought the good news to the shepherds.
My mother doesn't want me to be a shepherd.
Why not?
I don't know. She just said don't be a shepherd.
Another kid was more honest. Gladys Herdman hits too hard.
Gladys isn't going to hit anybody. What an idea. The angel just visits the shepherds in the fields and tells them Jesus is born.
And hits them.
Of course, he was right. You could just picture Gladys whamming shepherds left and right, but Mother said, that's perfectly ridiculous, and I don't want to hear another word about it.
While everybody was leaving, Mother grabbed Alice by the arm and said,
Alice, why in the world didn't you raise your hand to be married?
I don't know.
but I knew. I'd heard Imogene Herdman telling Alice what would happen to her if she dared to volunteer.
Next spring, when the pussy willows come out, I'll stick a pussy willow so far down your ear that nobody can reach it. And it'll sprout there and grow, and you'll spend the rest of your life with a pussy willow growing out of your ear.
So that was why Alice kept her mouth shut about being married.
You know, she wouldn't do all those things, I told Alice as we walked home.
Yes, she would. Herdmans will do anything. But your mother should have told them no. Someone should put Imogene out of the pageant. They'll do something terrible and ruin the whole thing.
I thought she was probably right. I mean, for 2 or 3 days, all anybody could talk about was the Herdmans being Mary and Joseph and all.
The first pageant rehearsal was usually about as much fun as a 3-hour ride on the school bus.
This rehearsal, though, was different.
Everybody shut up and settled down right away for fear it must have been something awful the Herdmans might do.
They got there 10 minutes late, sliding into the room like a bunch of outlaws about to shoot up a saloon.
We're glad to see you all. Probably the biggest lie ever said right out loud in church.
Imogene smiled and they sat. Closest thing to criminals we knew about, and they were going to represent the best and most beautiful. No wonder everybody was so worked up.
Mother started to separate everyone into angels and shepherds and guests at the end, but right away she ran into trouble.
Who were the shepherds? Where did they come from?
Ollie Herdman didn't even know what a shepherd was. Or that's what he said.
What was the inn?
It's like a motel where people go to spend the night.
What people? Jesus?
Oh, honestly, Jesus wasn't even born yet.
What happened first? Begin at the beginning.
Now that really scared me because the beginning would be the book of Genesis where it says, in the beginning. And if we were going to have to start the book of Genesis, we'd never get finished.
The thing was, the Herdmans didn't even know anything about the Christmas story.
They knew that Christmas was Jesus' birthday, but everything else was news to them.
The shepherds, the wise men, the star, the stable, the crowded inn.
It was hard to believe.
They never went to church their whole life till your little brother told them we got refreshments. And all you ever hear about Christmas in school is how to make ornaments out of aluminum foil. So how would they know the Christmas story?
She was right. Of course, they could have read about it, but they never read anything except for amazing comics.
And so Mother said she had better begin by reading the Christmas story from the Bible.
This was a pain in the neck to most of us who never had to be told anything.
Except who we were supposed to be and
where we were supposed to stand.
Joseph and Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child.
Pregnant?
Well, that stirred things up.
all the big kids began to giggle, and all the little kids wanted to know what was so funny, and Mother had to hammer on the floor with a blackboard pointer.
That's enough, Ralph.
I don't think it's very nice to say Mary was pregnant.
But she was. In a way, though, I agreed with her. I mean, it sounded so ordinary. Anybody could be pregnant.
Great with child sounded better for Mary.
I'm not supposed to talk about people being pregnant.
I pinched Alice. She yelped. Mother separated us and made me sit beside Imogene Herdman.
I wasn't crazy to sit next to Imogene, but she didn't even notice me.
Shut up! I want to hear her.
I couldn't believe it. The Herdmans were famous for never sitting still and never paying attention to anyone. Yet here they were, eyes glued on my mother, taking in every word.
What's that? They would yell whenever they didn't understand that language. And when Mother read about there being no room at the inn, Imogene's jaw dropped. My God! Not even for Jesus?
Well, now, after all, nobody knew the baby was going to turn out to be Jesus.
Well, Mary knew. Why didn't she tell them?
I would have told them. Boy, I would have told them. What's the matter with Joseph that he didn't tell her? Her pregnant and everything.
And what was that they laid the baby in? That manger, is that like a bed? Why do they have a bed in a barn?
They didn't have a bed in the barn, so Mary and Joseph had to use whatever there was. What would you do if you had a new baby and nothing to put the baby in?
We put Gladys in the bureau drawer.
Well, there you are. You didn't have a bed for Gladys, so you had to use something else.
Oh, we had a bed all right, only Ollie was still in it and he wouldn't get out. He didn't like Gladys. Remember how you didn't like Gladys?
I thought that was pretty smart of Ollie, not to like Gladys right off the bat.
Anyway, Mary and Joseph used the manger, a large wooden feeding trough for animals.
What were the wadded up clothes?
The what?
You read about it. She wrapped them in wadded up clothes.
Swaddling clothes. Long ago, people used to wrap their babies very tightly in big pieces of material so they couldn't move around. It made the babies feel cozy and comfortable.
You mean they tied him up and put him in a feed box? Where was the child welfare?
And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and
Shazam!
what? Mother never read Amazing Comic.
Out of the black night, with a horrible vengeance, the mighty, marvelous...
I don't know what you're talking about, Gladys. This is the angel of the Lord who comes to the shepherds in the fields and...
Out of nowhere, right? In the black of night, right?
So Gladys sat back down looking very satisfied, as if this was at least one part of the Christmas story that made sense to her.
Behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying,
That's you, Leroy, and Claude and Ollie, so pay attention.
What does it mean, wise men? Were they like school teachers?
No, dumbbell. That means like the president of the United States.
That's very close, Claude. Actually, they were kings.
Well, it's about time.
Maybe they'll tell the innkeeper where to get off and get the baby out of the barn.
They saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him, and presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh.
What's that stuff?
Precious oils and fragrant resins.
Oil? What kind of a cheap king hands out oil for a present?
Then we came to King Herod. And the Herdmans had never heard of him before either, so Mama had to explain that it was Herod who sent the wise men after the baby Jesus.
Mother said he planned to have the baby Jesus put to death.
My God! He just got born, and they're already out to kill him.
The herdmans wanted to know all about Herod,
What he looked like,
how rich he was.
And whether he fought wars with people.
He must have been the main king. If he could make the other three do what they wanted him to.
I mean, if I was king, I wouldn't let some other king push me around.
they were really interested in Herod, and I figured they liked him.
He was so mean, he could have been their ancestor, Herod Herdman.
But I was wrong.
So who's going to be Herod in this play?
We don't show Herod in our pageant.
And they all got mad.
Come on! They wanted somebody to be Herod so they could beat up on him.
I could not understand the Herdmans.
You would have thought the Christmas story came right out of the FBI files. They got so involved with it.
Wanted a bloody end to Herod.
Worried about Mary having her baby in a barn.
Called the wise men a bunch of dirty spies.
And they left the first rehearsal arguing about whether Joseph should have set fire to the inn or chased the innkeeper into the next county.
When we got home, Father wanted to hear all about it.
Well, just suppose you had never heard the Christmas story, didn't know anything about it, and then someone told it to you. What would you think?
Well, I guess it was pretty disgraceful that they couldn't find any room for a pregnant woman, except in the stable.
I was amazed. It didn't seem natural for my father to be on the same side as the Herdmans.
But then, it didn't seem natural for the Herdmans to be on the right side of anything.
It just would have made more sense for him to be on Herod's side.
Exactly. It was perfectly disgraceful, and I never thought about it much, but that doesn't change the fact that they put Mary in a barn. Now, let me tell you.
She told my father all about the rehearsal, and when she was through, she said,
It's clear to me that deep down those children have some good instincts after all.
I can't exactly agree. According to you, their chief instinct was to burn Herod alive.
No, their chief instinct was to get Mary and the baby out of the barn.
But even so, it was Herod they wanted to do away with and not Mary or Joseph.
They picked out the right villain. That must mean something.
Maybe so. What did happen to Herod anyway?
none of us knew.
But the Herdmans went and looked him up.
The very next day, Imogen grabbed me at recess.
How do you get a book out of the library?
You have to have a card.
How do you get a card?
You have to sign your name.
Do you have to sign your own name?
Sure, you have to sign your own name.
They have to know who has the books. I didn't see what difference it made anyway. Miss Gravener still was not going to let Imogen Herdman take any books out of the public library. They went in that afternoon, all 6 of them, and told Miss Graver they wanted library cards. Now, usually when anybody told Miss Gravener they wanted a library card, she would get this big happy smile on her face and say,
Good. We want all our boys and girls to have library cards.
She didn't say that to the Herdmans, though. She just asked them why they wanted library cards.
We want to read about Jesus.
Not Jesus. That king who was out to get Jesus. Herod.
Later on, Miss Gravener told my mother that she had been a librarian for 38 years and loved every minute of it.
But now, I might as well retire. When I heard Imogen Herdman came in and said she wanted to read about Jesus, I knew I'd heard everything there was to hear.
At the next rehearsal, Mother started again to separate everyone into angels and shepherds and guests at the end, but she didn't get very far. The Herdmans wanted to rewrite the whole pageant and hang Herod for a finish.
they just couldn't stand it that he up and died in bed of old age.
It just wasn't Jesus that he was after. He killed all kinds of people.
And nothing happened to him.
Well, he died, didn't he? I mean, maybe he died a horrible death.
What did he die of?
I don't know. It doesn't say. Maybe he got the flu.
They were so mad about it, I thought they might quit the pageant.
But they didn't.
And all the people who kept hoping that the Herdmans would get bored and leave were out of luck.
They showed up at rehearsals right on time and did just what they were supposed to do.
But they were still Herdmans.
And since none of the Herdmans had ever gone to church or read the Bible or anything, they just didn't know how things were supposed to be.
Imogen, for instance, didn't know that Mary was sort of quiet and dreamy.
The way Imogen did it, Mary was a lot like Mrs. Santoro down at the pizza parlor.
Mrs. Santoro is a big lady with a little skinny husband and 9 children. She yells and hollers and hugs her kids and slaps them around. That's how Imogen's Mary was, loud and bossy.
Get away from the baby! And you wise men, keep your distance!
The wise men want to honor the Christ child.
But the wise men didn't know how things were supposed to be either, and nobody blamed Imogen for shoving them out of the way.
One day I saw Alice write something down on a little pad of paper and trying to cover it with her hand.
It's none of your business.
It wasn't any of my business, but it wasn't any of Alice's either.
Every time you go in the girls' room, the air is blue and Imogen Herdman is sitting there in the Mary costume smoking cigars. Alice wrote all these things down.
I think she kept hoping that they would do one great, big, awful thing, and her mother would say, well, that's that, and get on the telephone and have them thrown out.
Be sure and tell your mother that I can step in right away and be Mary if I have to. And if I'm Mary, we can get the Perkinson's baby for Jesus.
The way things stood, we didn't have a baby. And this bothered my mother because you couldn't have the best Christmas pageant in history without the main character.
Mother had called everybody she knew, trying to scratch up a baby.
Listen, I'll get us a baby.
How would you do that?
I'll steal one. There's always 2 or 3 babies sitting outside the A&P.
Imogene, don't be ridiculous. You can't just walk off with someone's baby, you know? I doubt if Imogene did know. We just won't worry anymore about a baby. We'll use a baby doll. That'll be better anyway.
Our last rehearsal happened to be the night before the potluck supper.
When we got there, the kitchen was full of ladies in aprons, counting out dishes and silverware, and making applesauce cake for the dessert.
I'm sorry about this, one of the ladies told Mother, but the committee decided to come in this evening and set up tables. I just hope we won't bother you.
Oh, you won't? You won't even know we're in here.
But Mother was wrong. Everybody in that end of town knew we were there before the evening was over.
Right away, 3 or 4 baby angels began hollering that they forgot their wings.
The main point of a dress rehearsal is to go straight through without stopping.
But it didn't work out that way. The baby angels came in at the wrong place and had to go back out again. A whole gang of shepherds didn't come in at all for fear of Gladys.
Imogene couldn't find the baby Jesus doll and wrapped up a great big memorial flower urn in a blanket and then dropped it on Ralph's foot.
Hey, watch it.
So we had to start over.
I got the baby here. I got the baby. Don't touch it. I named him Jesus.
No. Imogene, you know you're not supposed to say anything. Nobody says anything in our pageant except the angel of the Lord. Mary and Joseph and the wise men make a lovely picture for us to look at while we think about Christmas and what it means.
I guess Mother had to say things like that, even though everybody knew it was a big lie.
The Herdmans didn't look like anything out of the Bible. More like trick or treat.
Imogene even had on great big gold earrings, and she wouldn't take them off.
I have to wear these.
Imogene, you know Mary didn't wear earrings.
I have to wear these.
Why is that?
I got my ears pierced. If I don't keep something in them, they'll grow together.
Well, they won't grow together in an hour and a half.
No. But I better leave them in.
What did the doctor say about leaving something in them?
What doctor?
Well, who pierced your ears?
Gladys.
That really made you shudder. The thought of Gladys Herdman piercing ears? I kept watching Imogene to see if her ears might turn black and fall off.
All right, but we'll try to find something smaller and more appropriate for you to wear in the pageant. Now we'll start again and go right straight through. And
I think I ought to tell him what his name is.
no. Besides, you remember it wasn't Mary who named the baby.
I told you. I named it.
Joseph didn't name the baby either. God sent an angel to tell Mary what his name should be.
I would have named him Bill.
What angel was that? Was that Gladys?
No. Gladys is the angel who comes to the shepherds with the news.
Yeah, unto you a child is born.
No, that just means Jesus belongs to everybody. Unto all of us a child is born. Let's start again and go straight through without stopping.
Well, we never did go straight through.
The 5-minute recess stretched to 15 minutes.
Then Miss Homer McCarthy smelled smoke in the ladies' room and called the fire department.
And by that time, the kitchen was so full of smoke because everybody was milling around outside. The applesauce cake burned up.
The ladies on the potluck committee were mad about that.
Alice said her mother would be good and mad too.
Most of the baby angels' mothers were mad because they couldn't find out what had happened.
It turned out to be the one great big awful thing that Alice kept hoping for.
Reverend Hopkins came to see Mother. I can't make heads or tails of it. The whole church is in an uproar. Do you think we should call off the pageant?
Certainly not. Well, it's going to be the best Christmas pageant we have ever had.
Maybe so, but I'm just afraid that no one will come to see it.
But he was wrong?
Everybody came to see what the Herdmans would do.
On the night of the pageant, we didn't have any supper because Mama forgot to fix it.
My father said that was all right. Between Mrs. Armstrong's telephone calls and the pageant rehearsals, he didn't expect supper anymore.
When it's all over, we'll go someplace and have hamburgers.
But Mother said when it's all over, she might want to go somewhere and hide. We have never once gone through the whole thing. I don't know what's going to happen.
But everything settled down, and at 7:30, the pageant began.
While we sang Away in a Manger, the ushers lit candles all around the church, and the spotlight came on as the star.
We sang 2 verses of O Little Town of Bethlehem while Mary and Joseph came in from a side door.
Only they didn't come in right away.
There was the usual big mess. Baby angels getting poked in the eye by other baby angels' wings.
Grumpy shepherds stumbling around over their bathrobes, and Away in the Manger was pitched so high we could hardly sing it.
Ralph and Imogene didn't come through the door pushing each other this time. They just stood there for a minute, as if they weren't sure they were even in the right place because of all the candles and the church full of people, I guess.
They looked like the people you'd see on the 6 o'clock news. Refugees sent to wait in some strange, ugly place with all their boxes and sacks around them.
Suddenly it occurred to me that this must have been just the way it was for the real Holy Family. Stuck away in a dirty old barn by people who didn't much care what happened to them.
They couldn't have been very neat and tidy either, but more like this, Joseph and Mary. Imogene's veil was cockeyed as usual, and Ralph's hair stuck out all around his ears.
Imogene had the baby doll, but she wasn't carrying it the way she was supposed to, cradled in her arms. She had it slung up over her shoulder. And before she put it in the manger, she thumped it twice on the back.
I don't think it's very nice to birth the baby Jesus, as if he had colic.
I said, I don't know why not. He could have colic or been fussy or hungry like any other baby.
After all, that was the whole point of Jesus. That he didn't come down on a cloud like something out of Amazing Comics, but that he was born and lived, a real person.
Next came Gladys from around behind the angel choir, pushing people out of the way. And since Gladys was the only person in the pageant who had anything to say, she made the most out of it.
Hey! Hey! Unto you a child is born!
She hollered, and as if it were for sure the best news in the world. And all the shepherds trembled, sore afraid of Gladys mainly, but it looked good.
Then the boys sang, We Three Kings of Orient Are, and everybody shifted around.
What have they got?
I didn't know, but whatever it was heavy.
Leroy almost dropped it.
And Claude and Ollie didn't have anything, even though they were supposed to bring the gold and the myrrh.
It was a ham. And right away I knew where it came from.
Father was on the church charitable works committee. They give away food baskets at Christmas, and that was the Herdman's food basket ham.
I'll bet they stole that.
They did not. It came from their food basket, and if they want to give it away, I guess they can do it.
Now, the Herdmans had never before in their lives given anything away except lumps on the head. So you had to be impressed.
While we sang What Child Is This?, the wise men were supposed to confer among themselves and then leave by a different door so everyone would understand that they were going home another way.
But the Herdmans didn't confer and they didn't leave. They just stood there.
Usually by the time that we got to Silent Night, the last carol, I was ready for the whole thing to be over.
But I didn't feel that way this time. I almost wished for the pageant to go on with the Herdmans in charge to see what else they would do that was different.
And I was so busy planning new ways to save baby Jesus, I missed the beginning of the Silent Night.
When we got to Son of God Loves Pure Light, I happened to look at Imogene, and I almost dropped my hymn book on a baby angel. Everyone had been waiting all this time for the Herdmans to do something absolutely unexpected.
And sure enough, that was what happened. Imogene Herdman was crying.
In the candlelight, her face was all shiny with tears, and she didn't even bother to wipe them away.
She just sat there. Awful old Imogene in her crookedy veil, just crying and crying.
best Christmas pageant we ever had?
Everybody said so, but nobody seemed to know why.
When it was over, people stood around in the lobby of the church talking about what was different this year.
I guess that's everything, said Father as he snuffed out the last of the tall white candles. It was quite a pageant. What's that you've got?
It's the ham. They wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take any candy either, but Imogene did ask me for a set of Bible story pictures. And she took out the Mary picture and said it was exactly right, whatever that means.
I think it meant that no matter how she herself was,
Imogene liked the idea of that Mary in the picture.
But as far as I'm concerned, Mary's always going to look a whole lot like Imogene Herdman. Little nervous and bewildered, but ready to clobber anyone who lays a hand on her baby.
and this was the funny thing about it all. For years, I'd thought about the wonder of Christmas, the mystery of Jesus' birth, and I never really understood it. But now, because of the Herdmans, it didn't seem that mysterious after all.
As for ruining the whole thing, it seemed to me that the Herdmans had improved the pageant a whole lot, just by doing what came natural, like burping a baby or thinking a ham would make a better present than a bunch of perfumed oil.
When we came out of the church that night, it was cold and clear, with crunchy snow underfoot and bright stars overhead. I thought about Gladys with her skinny legs and her dirty sneakers sticking out from under her robe, yelling at all of us everywhere.
Hey! Unto you a child is born.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that was so great. Oh, it was so great. Best Christmas pageant ever. Please join with me as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We'll see you next week for Christmas Eve. Brenda.